Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 296 of the On Air Advocate. Where at the On Air Advocate, we provide education, advocacy, and supportive services for special needs parents, caregivers, and those with different abilities, as well as complex medical conditions. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited if you are here this morning joining us, or if you are catching this on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the content we are talking about today could be relevant for anyone in your network or your circle, please hit the share button and share the love with others. Well, if you guys have been following along, you know that we are deep into our back to school and transition series. And with that, I am so excited to welcome to the show Tara Tuchel. She is a speech and language pathologist, say that today, and the founder of Autism Little Learners. Welcome, Tara.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and thank you for being such a trooper and still being here today. I know that you are getting over a cold, but she was like, I'm going to be here. That's the kind of commitment she has, and I'm just so thankful for it.
Well, thank you for being flexible just in case.
Yes. So as we have really taken a dive into our back to school series, I am excited for you to bring these tips on transition for our little ones. So today you were going to bring the 5 tips to help with the back to school transition. And this is in the space of those that are autistic, but also with any type of special needs or different ability, correct? That kind of have struggle with transition.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids, neurotypical or neurodiverse,
Mhm.
struggle with transition, but I think more so our neurodiverse population. And
Right.
specifically for me, my students who are autistic really can struggle with transitions and
Mm.
kind of going from one routine that you've had for a while and switching to a new routine. And of course, back to school is a big one.
Yes, most definitely. And actually, before we dive into the 5 top tips, I would love for you to share with the audience, because you haven't been on the show before, just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'm a speech language pathologist. This is starting my 23rd year,
Oh my God.
and yay!
Yes.
It's funny how quickly you go from like the young one in your job to the more seasoned teacher. But
Yes.
I'm a speech language pathologist, and my whole career I've kind of been immersed in the classroom. And so I kind of have a little special education teacher flair to me too, looking at more of the whole child than just the
Mhm.
communication needs. And I live in Wisconsin and teach in Minnesota, and I'm getting married next month, and we bought a house too. So it's a busy
Things have kind
September.
of busy, very, very busy. And I was clapping because if you all don't know, I'm from Wisconsin too. So us Wisconsinites here, and we're celebrating our summer, right? We only got a little bit of it left. We gotta
Oh
take advantage.
yeah, you know it's going to be gone soon.
Yes. And so I know that you launched, I'm not exactly sure how many years ago, maybe you can share your Autism Little Learners. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's something, Tammy, that I have had on my heart and really have had wanted to do for quite some time, ever
Mhm.
since shortly after I discovered Teachers Pay Teachers, where we can go to buy lesson plans, activities, materials. And I thought I was downloading materials and nothing was ever quite the right level for my 3 and 4 year old autistic students. Like I
Mhm.
always had to modify everything, and a lot of the materials were great. They just weren't quite at that just right level. So I was like, okay, I'm making tons of materials anyway for my students. I would love to upload them so that I can share with other educators that are in the same position as me. And so I had thought about it, never took action on it. And then in January of 2019, I lost my dad to leukemia.
Mhm.
And it was a really, really hard time. I mean, it still is. Grief is, until you lose someone close to you, you don't realize how much it impacts your life. And about 6 weeks after he died, I was like, okay, I'm going to start to I'm gonna start this Teachers Pay Teachers store. I named my business Autism Little Learners, and to reflect, I work with the littles who are autistic. And I thought this will give my brain something to do besides just grieve and focus on that. And that's where it started. Within probably a month after that, I had sold my first resource and went, okay, there are other people in the same position as me who, whether they're a speech language special ed teacher, or I discovered parents that want resources and materials
Yes.
to be working on skills and all sorts of things with their child.
Mhm. So needed, so needed. And your store and your collection of things is pretty amazing. So we will touch on that when at the end of this segment. But I would love for you to now kind of dive into those 5 tips.
Yeah, so 5 tips. I've been doing this a long time, and so I know the things that for the students I've worked with really, really help. And one of the things when I started my business, when I started Autism Little Learners, it was right pretty much a year in is when the pandemic started. And if you haven't heard of something called social stories, they were developed by Carol Gray. They are stories that are evidence based for autistic children. And so they kind of explain a situation, circumstance, a change in routine.
Mm,
And you can write these. The true social stories are really individualized for children. But I started putting stories, more informational stories out there for things that were happening with the pandemic, because that was such a transition to wearing masks and distance learning and all of that.
mm,
So a lot of people discovered me through my social stories. And so I started making them free for everybody on my website. And that is tip number 1, prepare. So you want to prepare your child, or if you're a teacher, prepare your students for the upcoming year. Are they going to be in a different building? Are there going to be different teachers or assistants with them? Will they be in a different classroom? So, as much as you can look ahead and take pictures and make a little story for them that's individualized, that is something the parents can read during the summer. Kids can go play on the playground maybe and, look at the picture in the story and just get more comfortable. So, I was going to show you this. I have this going to school story, and it's just a really simple story about summer vacation being done, and it's time to go back to school. And so teachers and parents can download this for free, and then you can individualize it to your child.
Okay, and so when they download it, they're downloading the sheets and then they can laminate it and that sort of thing, put it into a binder or a ring
Yeah, and then pick
or
which
so.
pages apply to their situation, and then
Mhm.
you can always add some more if you have a picture that you want to add to it. You can.
Oh, yes. And I love that, well, the preparing, but the doing that through social stories too, and kinda walking through, I know I'm finishing a book on traveling with your child with special needs, and in there, I refer to some of those things, like putting together a social story to kinda walk you through the experience because we know places like school, airports, traveling with your family across the United States, you really need a little bit of preparation for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
So, you know,
absolutely, and it's unpredictable. So as much as we can take that uh, unpredictableness, I don't know if that's even a word, but take something unpredictable and make it a little more predictable. It's going to decrease anxiety and really prepare. Um, I had a student last year who, this isn't a story about going to school, but a story about something different, the routines that we're talking
mhm,
about. I had a student who was 5 years old and he had never been able to go past the lobby at the dentist office. So, with his mom, we wrote a story together. She got pictures from the dentist office of all the areas, and we added in pictures of like exactly what was going to happen. And she read it to him for probably 2 months straight, every day. And then when he went back there, he sat in the chair and opened his mouth by himself. So she was just amazed and
Elated.
so happy. And I love that she was part of it too. So now
Mhm.
she learned what to do together. We did it. She can do it in the future going forward for different routines, including going back to school.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. That's so great. All right, so that is number 1, to prepare ahead of time. All
Yes.
right, so number 2.
All right. Number two is to connect. So this might be hard to do if they're not in your class yet. It might be hard to do ahead of time, but to
Mhm.
build positive relationships is a foundation of teaching new skills. I can't teach verbs, prepositions, all my speechy stuff until I have a relationship with the child. And I think sometimes we think, well, that doesn't even need to be said, but it kind of does because I think sometimes when we get so busy in the classroom, you forget about some of these foundational skills and how important they are now, especially after coming back after the pandemic.
Right, right. And would you say it's really important for parents to make sure, because they can make the connection with the teachers, like if they go to any open
Yeah.
houses or before school starts to kind of ease things, because not only are they walking through, but they can connect with them and start to build that trust.
Yeah, and
Mm.
before school starts, I love to send out like the welcome back packet. And in that packet is like the story. And then I also send an inventory, motivator inventory, whatever you want to call it, where parents can fill it in and it tells like all the things their kids love, all the things that bother them, all the things down to specific, like what are their favorite YouTube videos that they watch. I mean, 3 to 5 year olds, they're watching songs on YouTube.
Mhm.
So if I can pull out some of those things, favorite characters, okay, they love Paw Patrol. I'm going to use that to connect with
Okay.
them, especially those first weeks of school, but also integrate it into activities.
Mhm. Yes, most definitely. And number 3, regulate.
Yeah, number three is regulate. So, regulation and connection are kind of my big two when it comes to building that foundation of my relationship with kids. If kids are dysregulated, and we hear a lot more about this, I would say over the last several years, regulation, self regulation,
Mm.
a little more about co regulation now. Kids need to be regulated, or else, again, going to that teaching skills area is not going to happen. You know, if we're dysregulated, we're not taking things in and learning them. So, having a calming corner, finding out again from the parents what calms your child. Are there any phrases that are calming? So sometimes a lot of children who are autistic will get into patterns, and the parents will know these, and they might be able to give you some of those indicators that they're starting to experience stress and maybe what to do to help them. So parents know their kids best, and so being sure to ask them is super important.
Very, very good. Um, and then number 4.
Building routines. So, building predictable routines. And part of this starts when we talked about number one, preparing, but we
Mhm.
want to build routines in the classroom and even at home if you're a parent that kids can count on. We all thrive on routine and we get thrown off if our routine is thrown off. So, me being sick the last few days, my routine is totally thrown off, and it's stressful because you're like, oh, I need to get this done and that done, but everything is chaos. And I think sometimes going back to school can feel like that for kids. They're like, wait, I've been doing this for how many months? And especially after the pandemic, when everyone's routine changed and now we're coming back to like normal, being
Mhm.
in the classroom starting out this year. I think this year, out of all the years I've taught, is the most important year to come back to these basics. So, build routines through visual schedules when we're talking about autistic
Mhm.
children, and build routines with visual supports that they can predict. And so, in my community, we've talked about I have a free visual support starter set, and I'm sure you'll link it, Tammy. But
Okay.
in there it has a little information about visual schedules and some pictures to kind of start a basic one at home or school. But then there's also different visual supports, like the all done bucket. And I heard from a teacher in my community yesterday. She posted and said, "Oh my gosh, Tara, this is like a miracle visual support." She goes, "My students are using it." So all it is any kind of little bucket or shoebox, bin, and you put this symbol on it that says all done. And it's in the visual support starter set. And you teach the kids, like, okay, 2 more minutes with trains, and then we're all done. And then you introduce it that way. Every time we set a timer, when the timer goes off, I help them pick it up and put them in. Eventually, when that routine is set, you can simply bring the all done bucket over. And sometimes before I even set the timer, they start putting the stuff in, instead of having this like terrible transition where they don't want to give it up. You build in this simple routine and it changes everything.
Yes, I love it. And going back lots of years, like I told you, my son that has special needs, he's turning 25 in another month. But years ago, before some of these things came out, I mean, my pictures were probably pretty poor. I mean, your books and your stuff is so adorable, as well as you can actually tell what it is. But I had taken, because I have 4 kids, I had taken a shoe rack, one of those plastic ones that you can like hang up on your closet with all the slots. And I drew pictures of each thing that had to happen in the morning. And then when it was done, they'd flip their card, but obviously
Awesome.
didn't have language. But I really need to find those, because I'm sure my pictures had something to be desired.
What's funny, Tammy? I have a para that she retired this year, but she had been there since I student taught at the district that I'm in now. And so we ended up, I student taught, she was a para in my classroom at the time. And now fast forward where I've gotten to work with her the last 10 years again. But she found these pictures of me when I was student teaching, working with a student, and their Polaroids. And that was their first visual schedules back then, is they do Polaroid pictures. Okay, time to work with Tara. And then they would Velcro it up on the visual schedule, and that was their schedule.
Yes, yes. I know an advancement, like years that went by as he got older, the teacher store, I'm saying, grew in the amount of things they had. And I remember buying this bear. It was a bear that had all of the different outfits for the seasons. And obviously here in Wisconsin, we have a lot of winter. But then in the morning for getting dressed, when he was dressed, we would put on, like Velcro on, like the jacket and the shoes, like each step that we were doing. But that was, that bear was cute. I just really have to find the pictures I drew, but I probably should have done with the Polaroids.
Teachers and parents are so creative when it comes to finding a way with their kids.
Yes. So building those routines is so important, and making those schedules too. All right. So number 5.
Yeah, number 5, you finally get to teach, right? So all of these things I just talked about are teaching, and you're teaching such important skills. But I think sometimes we get caught up on, well, the IEP has, like I said, verbs, prepositions, or if you're a special ed teacher, numbers, letters, and those are super important. But if you think of maybe a bird's eye view of life, what do you want for your child? I'd rather have my child have a super good relationship with the adults they're with at school, have routines that help them feel safe and less anxious, and also be regulated, right?
Yes.
So in life, those are the most important things. When we focus on those, the byproduct is then we get to teach more, those other skills that are often the skills in the communication and academic area on the IEP. So with the littles, with the 3 to 5-year-olds, it's super fun to do play-based teaching, play-based learning at first. And, you can add in more of the formal flashcards or whatever. But I feel like right now everything is shifting once again in education, and I'm happy to see that things are shifting at the preschool level to more play-based. I love that. So, and when you're doing play-based to teach, you're kind of combining that relationship and that
Mhm.
connection with the skill you're trying to teach, which is a win-win.
Now, I love these, and as you're talking about the littles of 3 to 5, do you feel like I mean, because I feel like the social stories and a lot of the things you create could be used for 5 and beyond. I mean, definitely, and I mean, do you find I know you have a membership group, which I'm sure you guys explore these other like ideas of how to kind of navigate these same things as the kids age, and still creating those routines and all of those schedules and things for them. But
Yeah.
do you say that I mean do many utilize your products for above the age of 5?
Yeah. So in the membership, which is a monthly membership where I provide products and training, inside of that, I would say the majority are probably preschool age teachers and parents, but there are some early elementary. And so I would say kind of all of these strategies work as kids get older. They just shift a little bit. So I also have a visual schedules course to teach how to decide what type of visual schedule, how to implement it, all these
Right,
things, how to get your paras, your staff to be using it consistently.
right.
And inside of that one, though I focus on the early learners, the concept is the same. And I do talk about in the course also, like all you need to do is change it as kids get older. So if they're in middle school and they can read now, well, then you're going to have a written schedule. So
Right.
inside the course, I talk about people will say, like, and for many years, okay, well, when do we get rid of the visuals? When do we get rid of the visual schedule? And as educators, we say, as soon as you're ready to get rid of your to do list, your planner, your Google Calendar, your shopping list, because those are all visuals. They're just written. So if we can get kids moving as they get older into more of like a day planner, that's awesome. But we just meet them where they're at. So you could have a fifth grader that needs an object schedule or a schedule with pictures. And so then this level of stuff I'm teaching is still completely appropriate.
Right, right, and I'm sure that a lots of especially with technology now, so many shift also into using, like, the iPad and
Yeah.
using
Oh,
different
yeah,
schedules and visuals and communication, all of that way as well.
absolutely.
And did they I know this is completely off of the topic, but do they integrate that a lot into your preschool, like the 3 to 5-year-olds? Are, iPads and electronical devices incorporated a lot at that point or not really?
Totally depends on the child, but we do for AAC. I've had a lot of students over the past few years get devices, and I'll work with the company and insurance and stuff to get that going, but that as their communication device. And
Okay.
I'm just exploring, there's a company out there called Goally, Goally.
Oh, yes, you know what, I've seen a lot of people in
Have
our
you?
community that do love that, and they use
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of parents love it because you don't have to print and laminate. So I'm working with them to kind of try it out. They had given me a Goalie device, so it looks like a phone pretty much,
mhm,
and it is like an Android phone. And they load on there. It's an app where parents and educators can put together a visual schedule or a little routine, like going to the bathroom. So I had gotten it in the spring, but it was close to the end of the year. But I used it with a couple students for the bathroom routine. And you could press like start and then they'd see it. And it you can use real pictures or the pictures like the cartoon type pictures. And with a couple students, they were really taking to it. So once I'm back in the classroom here this fall, I'll keep going with that because the digital options for both visual schedules and
mhm.
for being their voice, their expressive communication. Both of those options are so fantastic that we live in a time where that's available. But versus back, Tammy, when we were using Polaroids and shoe racks. So,
That's what I always say. I'm like, parents today, if they would only know, like 25 years ago when he got diagnosed, they'd literally handed me a brochure and I like called an 800 number that I ended up sitting on hold for 2 hours. And, and
yeah,
there was it was very hard to find supportive groups, memberships. There was none of that.
there was no internet.
Right. At time. There wasn't cell phones, I mean, just so, so different. So I just love everything that you do for your community and that you put together with Autism Little Learners. And we could get off on about 50 different subjects. I know, me and you talking, but we're trying to keep this at that half an hour mark. So I would love for you to share with the audience how they can find Autism Little Learners, if they want to connect with you, the best way to be able to chat with you and those sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, I think a great place to start is my website, which is just autismlittlelearners.com. And if you go to the website, you're going to see up at the top a spot where you can look at the free social story library. So in there, it's split into school, home, community. You'll be able to find what you need. And on there, you'll see other options that I have. Some of my materials are on there for sale, but others are over on Teachers Pay Teachers. But I don't want to confuse you. So you can always just send me a DM on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook under Autism Little Learners.
Okay. So somebody who's looking for something specific, it's better to just direct message you.
Yeah, and that visual support starter set I was talking about, if you just go to www.autismlittlelearners.com/visuals, VISUALS. See if I can spell. If you go there, you're going to be able to sign up to get it sent right to you. And that's a great place to start too.
Okay, perfect. And all the links we are talking about today, we will drop below these broadcasts as well as in the podcast show notes as well to make it easy and accessible for everyone to find. So with that, thank you so much, Tara, for spending this morning with us here at the On Air Advocate and being a part of our Back to School series. And thank you all for watching this morning. And until next time, friends, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.